it is. Right, let's move on to your next one then.
Hose ban.
Yes, we talked about this a little at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I would like to talk about it. You know, there is a Jewish word which is not translated in English.
Okay.
Oh.
I'm going to try and help out over here. It's called chutzpah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think we know what chutzpah means.
Chutzpah basically means, is like, wow, that's a real cheek you've got. That's you're really taking advantage, but it means much, much more than that. What a chutzpah. What a chutzpah that the water boards actually have in asking us to don't use our water, certainly not to use the hose, when they are leaking thousands and thousands of gallons of water per day. Do you know exactly how much it is? To put that into context, it's actually more than 1,000 full-size Olympic swimming pools per day. The amount of water is leaking from their tanks, from their pipes. And why are they not doing anything about it? They don't want to upset their shareholders because they've got great dividends at this point as well. And this is a major problem. You're looking to say something.
No, I was just going to say it just seems wrong. I would say you can't pay the shareholders until you fix your leaks.
I mean, but this is the problem. The government has not held them accountable. It's always a sort of a double-edged sword, right? If you're going to privatize these industries, there need to be standards. The government needs to impose these standards. They need to do spot checks. They need to make sure that you're not taking the mickey out of it, because the whole point of privatizing industry is for greater efficiency, so the taxpayer doesn't have to shell out as much. But then if you don't do that, then you're basically saying just nationalize the industry, because at the end of the day, we're not getting the service that we're paying for.
Right.
And this is always the hard balance to strike. But again, this is rudderless leadership, and it's clear that, you know, for CEOs to get paid in excess of 10 million quid for effectively not providing a decent service is completely shambolic.
And I'm very glad you brought in the privatisation, because the water boards were privatised in 1989, of course, for obvious reasons, to bring in competition.
Exactly.
But we don't have competition.
No.
The large one over here is Thames Water in the south, and you have
A lot of our water is owned by the Qataris, isn't it?
Well, I was going to come on to that, because out of the different water boards, let me just... Wessex Water is owned by a Malaysian company. So they're owned by shareholders around the world. Northumbria Water is 80% of that is owned by a Hong Kong businessman. Thames Water, by far the largest provider, wastes more than, well, we've already talked about how much is wasted as well. So a number, therefore your investments, your dividends, your profits are actually going around the world.
Well,
It's not benefit. And if, I'm just saying if, just to put it out there as well, if we were to re-nationalise, and I'm not a nationalised person. I'm old enough to remember going to school when Harold Warsaw was in power, when Jim Callum was in power.
Right.
So when Margaret Thatcher came in to give us competition, that was the whole objective.
Indeed.
In other words, we were unhappy with our customer service, we just moved to another company. We're seeing less and less of that today, simply because we're not getting customer service, because people are working from home.
But you can't move. That's the point about water.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Now, if it was nationalised, that means that any profits that come from that actually go back
into
the Chancellor of the Exchequer, whoever he or she might be as well.
Yes, but Esther made a very good point. Nationalised industries are often not very well run.
They're not very
Look
well
at
run.
British
They're more
Rail.
expensive and they're less efficient. Listen, I don't have a problem with privatising your industry, but you have to be clever about it, and you have to sort of change with the times, right? You can't have your industry being owned by regimes that are not really friendly to the UK. That's pretty common sense. You can't have, you know, the kind of across the board privatization without having standards that are constantly checked and constantly updated, right? Because at the end of the day, your loyalty is to the people that are receiving the service, not to these massive private companies. Yes, they're going to make profits one way or another, but if you're losing that much water in leaks and then have the audacity to tell the British public to stop using water, how dare you?
Yeah, quite right.
That's exactly what I'm saying as well. And actually, the paddling pools, you know those little paddling pools, most of kids, most shops around the country have actually sold out of them, because everyone's buying them, because you fill up your paddling pool with water, and you take the water from that paddling pool and you clean your car, or you water the flowers, your grass, etc., etc. So it doesn't really do anything about it. And I just really want to highlight this simply because it is a chutzpah that the water boards are actually telling us what to do. That's the leadership skills. You